in the Artist's Garden on the embankment at Temple in London. It's a bit of London. Just been with mates in a hut right down there. What's the importance of a hut? What's the importance of a node, a place where we meet? Well, you know, it's all about symbolism, really, isn't it? It's the value that we impose on something. And a hut where cabbies come for early morning breakfast baps and coffees. The building has actually been there for a long time. Taken over by somebody who used to run a media company and is pretty tired by it all. Still wants to engage his brain and soul with serving people breakfast and coffee. Overseen by a cultural ecologist who can see the ley lines. What am I talking about? Mates of mine, Ben and Rena, taking everyday things and putting meaning into them just by sort of feeling in. It's the work of the artist, man, right? Not unlike transport engineers in London. They're expressing themselves here in quite some detail, just trying to cross the road. So I am coming back from London, and I thought I'd stop off and see my friends who were sitting in this hut. Because you can overlook the meaning in a complicated place like London. And I've been right in the middle of London, proper London. Establishment London. The Royal Society of Arts, Manufacturing and Commerce. Never set foot in there before, up on John Adams Street, just up behind me. I'm just about to walk past Somerset House, another bastion of sort of arts in the city. And there's a long way to go between institutional stone sprawled across a massive site on the South Bank, or between here and the Strand. You know, Greco-Roman columns, winding labyrinthine rooms, wood-panelled, illustrious names on the wall, dates going back, in the RSA's case, 270 years this year, 2024. That's a long way from a wooden hut, just on the street behind Temple Underground Station, isn't it? You know, like disciples meeting in an upper room, becoming a state religion a couple of centuries later. Things take on a life of their own and then they become hard to wield. And what's the point of me saying all this? I was invited by A.Y. Young, my colleague in music and change making, who brought together a brilliant gang of people at the RSA and invited me in to moderate a couple of panels, music for impact, building bridges. One of the themes of the RSA this year, radical collaboration and courage. And they are desperate to build bridges into younger people's experiences. And it was great, you know, it was some kid from Bournemouth. I might have a southern English accent, make jokes with the boss of the RSA, but who do I know in the establishment? They can smell I shouldn't really be in there, but they're all very nice. And poking around these rooms and seeing all the things going on in different rooms. Indigenous elders in one room and young people doing media stuff in another, and then a dinner in some other, and lots of people sitting around working. You know, it seems like a hive of creativity and thoughtfulness. And what I've always liked about the RSA was, when I've come across it over the last 10 years, it's spoken about the application of thought and problem solving with creative minds, with artistic thinking, to dealing with the crises of our time, being absolutely fundamentally applied. Bring your creative thinking, bring your heritage of artistic work, and apply that mind to changing the world for the better, because we need to. Love their tone. And that's why I've had written on all my lists of things to do for the last 5 years, join the RSA. Somehow I escaped the building, still not quite having my thumbprint taken, but I shall become a fellow. It's time I did. Because it seems like an institution that we should help by being part of. But they do, I suspect, still have very institutional problems. A lot of expensive real estate to look after, a lot of, worse than that, old traditions, habits, cultural expectations. Meeting Andy Haldane for the first time, you know, interesting bloke, fun energy. He was the Bank of England for 32 years. They didn't appoint an artist to run the RSA, no, an economist. It's quite institutional sounding, isn't it? Institutional. Now I think he's got an interesting energy. I want to go and take him for coffee. Of course I do. But walking around a city like London that is so institutional, the Elizabeth Tower, Big Ben, Tower of London, symbol of Elizabethan power, the roots of our imperial influence in this country, this tired country, and we're a week away from an election. As the tourists play along the South Bank over there and along the embankment here, twirl up to the Strand, and here I am, just some kid from Bournemouth, walking back to Waterloo to catch the train back to Bournemouth, past the wonderful Royal Festival Hall, symbol of modernist hopes, placed over there where the first thing after the war, this progressive symbol of hope, where the Skylon used to stand, a big exhibition, torn down by the Tories as soon as Churchill got back into power in the early 50s. You know, it's been a tussle in this country the whole time to use our institutions for good. Now, as somebody who wants to see the Tories eviscerated, torn apart and completely removed from public influence, so horrific has been their testimony of precariousing, if that's a verb, so many people's lives. So much have they ideologically hollowed out all competence and resilience and future thinking and community, starting with Thatcher, but really built on all those years. I'm so used to thinking negatively about a Tory point of view. Peter Oborne, in an interview, sort of reminded me, I think, that I didn't interview him, by the way, I just watched it. It reminded me that there's some institutional wisdom also simultaneously been happening in Britain. Still functioning on the economics of empire, but along the way somehow creating some stability and opportunity for people too. And that veneer of good has just been torn to bits by the politics in this country now. It's a very precarious time. So to be in an institution like the RSA, with a young American music artist who brings showbiz everywhere he goes as part of the storytelling, he turns up and people go, wow, makes me look like the sensible one. To be in that institutional place talking about art's place in crisis was sort of profound, really. I met some amazing minds in there. And in a way, we didn't get to the heart of it. You know, I could have just preached at everybody and it wouldn't have worked. I allowed myself a bit of room too by the last panel where we were talking more specifically about music. But where Andy Haldane said in a speech when he left the Bank of England, he actually reiterated this notion in the room with us yesterday. It's not enough to imagine the futures we want, we have to realise them. And for that we need radical collaboration and working with minds that can solve the problems and build them. Yeah, and everybody sort of cheered. My point is, you know, with Unsee the Future is we don't know how to imagine. There's also people talking with great ideas, but to bring alive the possibilities is the crisis. To change the story we think we're in, because we think it's just endless decline and the rise of Nigel bloody Farage, who rhymes with garage, and the fascists and the grifters and those who will take us to not just being openly racist and legally discriminatory, but in the end that's a path that can end up at sort of violence on the streets against anybody who doesn't fit. And we're heading in that direction, bit by bit by bit by bit. As more people say, oh yeah, Farage, he's talking a lot of sense. He's not speaking any sense. He's not going to help anyone, of course. But for so long as that's the narrative cutting through, we're in trouble. I need to get up there, don't I? I can see that. How do I get up there? Crossing the road again by the looks of it. Look the right way. In the coming and going, the endless traffic of our times, where just crossing the road is hard. You know, the very flows of traffic, transport, travel, all the infrastructure, it's a comfort, right? You think these institutions can't fall down. Look, right, I'm going to go. Coming to a city can actually reassure you that life's way bigger than your worries. And as much as the city can sweep you away, it'll also still be here tomorrow. But that's not necessarily true. Everything's way more precarious than you think, and I think any leaders would admit that. If anyone who's been in senior leadership over a nation knows, good Lord, it's all cobbled together with habit and luck, storytelling, and a lot of BS. And really, a nation lives or dies with the faith that it's the greatest group of people living there having it, the idea in their head, the story they think they're in of a place. Institutions can end up getting in the way. They can also be platforms to bring an awful lot of visibility, which we need. We need visibility of new ideas. And I want to say to the RSA, we've got to start with a truly artistic vision. That the commerce and the manufacturing isn't separate, it's part of the artistic vision. It's all just thinking like an artist, mate. I think they might need reminding. And you need some uninstitutional people to go in there and work with the institution to help it become an engine for change at more scale. All this big stuff. The sound of cities doing their thing, dealing with crisis, building up big symbols of, confidence, new millennial hopes that then slowly keep just going round. Big bridges, cleaning up the stone of previous generations, and it all becomes the patchwork of our identity today. What does it all mean, these different layers of time? London is this layer cake of different histories, all adding up to us today. Where are we going to take that in the future if we are not feeling creatively literate? If the great mass of us don't feel like we can imagine better? It's exactly the sort of thing the RSA needs to be trying to get behind, isn't it? The radical collaboration will actually start with people who aren't used to being artists. No worries. It will start with people who aren't used to being artists feeling that they can think and act like one and not get hung up on the label. Just get on with the practices of changing the world by changing the way you see it. And those who are very well practiced, like me and others, loads of brilliant minds I met in the last couple of days, it's our job to encourage others. Wise Rena, choosing to be in that hut with Ben, said to me the night before we did our thing, and she came along, and I said, please say it to the room. She said, the real point here is, how many musicians have you created, unlocked, in your own work as a musician to AY? We just need more instruments put in people's hands. There was a Buddhist monk who's been artist of the Dalai Lama, I forget his name, he gave me his card. He cut through our meeting with Andy Haldane by saying, can I just stand up and ask us all to sing? And he got us to sing a blessing with him, to declare over the room prosperity and our creativity. But instantly he cut through our talk about art and strategy and thinking, which is all good, and he filled our bodies with vibration and harmony between us. It's got straight to it. It feels like this. It feels like this, the act of creation, the act of testimony, the act of embodying truth right where you are. It feels like this. That's what we've got to do. And I think it feels like sitting in a little wooden hut with some history, seeing the ley lines of possibilities sit around it because of intentionality, of making something mean somewhere that isn't an institution with stone and money and royal patronage on every wall you walk around. The patronage is London cabbies. The history is years of just serving the flow of a city, ordinary seeming lives that don't have titles and ermine. Going there and getting the warmth and comfort of a butty. And that's where two of the finest minds I know are choosing to just be and encourage people. And I might take comfort in all this infrastructure when I come to visit London because it hasn't beaten it out of me. I live by the seaside. Those guys are just choosing to show up right where they are. And they're not worried about making an institution. They're worried about creating a moment, an experience for people. And already Rena's had conversations with hidden artists and people who use their brains and souls for a living, but are also along the way volunteering for charities and sitting down to have a cuppa in the hut. Man, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. In a city like this where, goodness me, the mechanics of dealing with waste and traffic and movement, commerce, where what we see on the surface is tourists just passing through. Actually, what we're all worried about is where the hell the bills are going to get the money from. What we've got together has been hollowed out. And we've got to start to imagine how to put it back in and what we're going to put in. What is the creative energy of our future going to feel like? That little wooden hut right next to the edificial confidence of Somerset House with its nice little soirees. I kind of feel there's a place to be in both, to hop between them and see how we can work up the energy of creation that isn't about either. It's about you and me and how connected we feel. Radical collaboration. We want connection. We want purpose. We want our lives to feel like they're going somewhere, because purpose feels like life. Somebody said that to me in the last couple of days. When you've got purpose, it feels like life force. And so many of us are feeling, so purposeless. So many signals of wonderful playfulness going on the South Bank.
I can see them.
Past a big institutional theatre. We've got to start putting new songs and stories of us into the old institutions and into our streets and our coffee huts alike. We've got to put instruments in each other's hands and help each other say, it feels like this. The future feels like this. It can feel like this. Yeah, I've got to go home and digest this, I think. Maybe just one more coffee.